as you may recall, on our last episode, we discussed the F- grade that the Cincinnati Bengals received from their players this past season for their treatment of families on game day, in particular when it comes to childcare.
Yeah, so the Women's Tennis Association, or WTA for short, announced a new maternity leave program that covers more than just game days. The program will provide pregnant players with 12 months of paid maternity leave or 2 months paid leave for players whose partners are giving birth or for those who become parents via adoption or surrogacy. It's pretty cool. The WTA thinks this is going to benefit over 300 players.
It's incredible.
You know?
They're also offering grants for fertility treatments, including egg freezing and IVF. So before we get into details, what's your initial reaction?
I mean, this is obviously a win for women. And
I know, it's
just like
amazing.
such a, I love that this is a positive outcome given the story we talked about last week and just like what other leagues are doing. This is exactly what other leagues should be trying to strive for.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Also, specifically with the egg freezing, like as an elite athlete, that must be such a mental load off of you because it's a security blanket. Like if anything doesn't work out or if you want to have kids later down the line, you know that you have eggs that you have frozen. So it's like, okay, I can be all in my career right now and not have to worry about planning a baby between this tournament and this year and what happens if I am really productive during this season, maybe I should delay the baby, blah blah blah. So there's like so much mental strain. I'm
totally
sure
that's like mental gymnastics to the max.
100%.
That was one thing that really struck me. I just like feel like it helps women feel like they can do it all, not that they have to, but they can if they choose to. They can have a family, they can also be really good at their sport and not have to sacrifice one or the other. I feel like that was a big conversation around Serena Williams. Like, I don't think she wanted to choose between one or the other. I think it was time for her to retire and she was happy to make that decision when it came time. But I remember that was a conversation that she kind of brought up. Like, I hate that this feels like it has to be a choice. And Naomi Osaka has said something similar too. She famously has one little girl.
Yeah.
But also it reminded me of, not to like shamelessly plug here, but it reminded me of the Skim has this initiative that they started, I think like 2 or 3 years ago called Show Us Your Leave. And it was just like a really big campaign to get private sector companies at least to show off their paid family leave because that's something that is not offered at the federal level. And so it's really up to, unfortunately, like companies to take on that brunt of the work. So I think it was great that the WTA announced this and they're like very proudly showing it off. And I think just increased visibility into these benefits only helps other people, only helps address the problem and like helps other leagues. For example, like the NFL, maybe they'll see this and be like, okay, maybe this is not obviously offering their players maternity leave, but paternity leave. That's important too.
100%.
So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And I think it's obviously like the elite athletes are rushing back to get back to their athletic careers.
Yes.
They're not typically rushing back for financial compensation, but like some are, like we just talked about, the lesser known names that still are competing are probably going back for financial security too. And no one should rush back. Like I remember Serena Williams, even she had this crazy complicated birth. She had a scary C-section and she was back on the court 4 months later. That's insane.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, she is also Superwoman, so like I get it, but yeah, it's just like no one should feel pressured to rush back.
Yes. Yeah. The program is being funded by the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund. And I feel like we all kind of know Saudi Arabia has been on a mission to break into sports, I would say, in like the Western world, but also hosting, I know the
like Live Golf is a big one.
Yeah. And the WTA Tour finals happen in Saudi Arabia. And this is kind of like a sticking point, I would say, for some people, because it's like obviously a win for women in tennis, but it also comes with a bit of like, I don't know. Basically, people are just concerned that about Saudi Arabia's record, I would say, with human rights abuses, particularly against LGBTQ people and women. In a 2024 report, Human Rights Watch alleged that Saudi Arabia's public investment fund is used to sports wash the Saudi government's record around human, women, and LGBTQ rights. Even Coco Gauff, I remember, I think it was last year, she was saying how she would consider not returning to the tour finals if their record on human rights did not improve. So I think it's a bit of a difficult situation. I'm happy for the women, but also understand like why athletes would be questioning or like wanting a bit more transparency into that record.
Yeah, it's a great step, but it does like just have to, you have to acknowledge where it's coming from.
Where the money's coming from.